So my seminar today is about cloud and hardware. Finding this is a massive question that we're dealing with. Don't go, you've had the free sandwiches, turn around and come back. How rude's that? So we're talking about cloud versus hardware today, which is a question that comes up a lot when we're seeing people. So I think the big thing is I've been in this industry for 20 years, and 5 years ago, it was a very clear-cut thing. If you wanted to get a new servers for your computers, you just go out and buy a server. And I think if you wanted a new phone system, then you just went and bought a new phone system. But there's a lot more choice now for businesses. And that's been a really, really powerful thing because it's led to a lot more options. Smaller businesses can have exactly the same as bigger businesses, but at a much more fractional price. IT often normally requires a server still, but a lot of the core components which you would have put onto the server, software components, which meant having a much more powerful server, are now available on the cloud rather than the software you buy up front, which is both a lot cheaper in terms of capital cost. And also it takes a lot off the server, so the servers don't have to be as powerful and can be less expensive. Phone systems equally can be on-premise, so they can be a box in your office, or they can be in cloud. Those two options are actually quite interesting to look at. One of the things about them is that the different things don't suit one person or another, so that's really what I want to talk about today. It's just, I'm not going to tell you that you should have one thing or another. I'm just going to talk about what the different options can give to you, and you'll know your own business better and be able to think about how it'll work for you the best. So there's a huge choice for end users, and I want to help you try and decide what it is for you. So I thought, the other thing is, obviously I'm standing here, so I've paid my money, but any idiot could have paid their money to stand here. So I thought I'd just tell you a little bit about myself and hopefully let you know that I do know a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. So I own a telecoms and IT company called Adaptive Comms. I've been in the industry for 20 years. I've been in the business owning Adaptive Comms for 13 years. We count some of the UK's largest brands as our customers. We've got quite a lot of different brands. One of the biggest ones would be Scottish Power, but there's also people like Prince's Foods, Cotton Traders, and several others. We serve hundreds of SME customers as well. There's lots of names that, of course, people won't know unless they deal with, because we're predominantly business to business. We're fully accredited with all the relevant industry bodies. Two of the biggest ones we are accredited with are NEC and Microsoft. We're partners with both of those organisations. We've seen a huge growth in the last few years in cloud and IP. I mean, it's really, really took off. The market's changed completely in the last 3 years or so. This was something we prepared for, and as a result, we've become a market leader in delivering that. We won the reason we took a stand here is because Murabak, who runs this, contacted me because we won the E3 Business of the Year award. So we thought we'd come and have a go at it. But that was really as a result of an interview process that looked at all those things that we'd planned for and done. So anyway, enough about me. Telecoms is what I want to start on. So SIP, I don't know how many people here are familiar with SIP. It's quite a new technology. It often gets confused with other things. But basically, one of the first things that's happened is BT have now announced that they're going to turn off traditional telephony, such as ISDN, in 2025, which I know is a long way away, but there's an ongoing problem that obviously now they're not training engineers anymore in ISDN. So ISDN engineer skills are going down like that, whereas SIP skills are coming up on the other side. The migration is already underway right now. Oh, there you go, sorry. I'll do that from time to time. I'll do one of my lines early. So, and there's lots of old phone systems out there that need changing. One of the things that's happened, obviously, is if you've had a business like mine, you've been through the recession, and on the other side of the recession, you know, we've all learned to sort of keep hold of our money and be a bit careful about what we spend it on. One of the problems with a phone system, if we're going to be brutally honest, is that it costs money. So if you've got one that's sort of working, then, you know, do you want to change? That's a common theme. Lots of people would like to, but perhaps the finance is not always there. SIP offers better quality, and on average, the bill from SIP is around 50% less because it's just much, much less expensive. The way that it transmits the technology is less onerous on the network, and therefore there's less cost to it. And the savings generally will provide for new equipment. So we're regularly going up to see clients, and the savings we're able to offer them will replace their system. So in a nutshell, the analogy I like to look at with it is it's a bit like the move from analog to digital TV. I imagine we all in this room remember that. We all had to change from the old TV and buy a box or whatever. This is a little bit more sophisticated, but the premise is the same. You have to move. You know, you haven't got a choice. You're going to have to move. Unlike TVs, though, where you had to go and buy something, this is self-funding. We hardly ever go to a client and can't provide a new system once we make the change to SIP without it being effectively free within the same budget. So this is a real example of a small accountants that I did recently, just to give an idea. We've just signed a deal in the last fortnight for a 12-site multimedia company, which is a £750,000 deal. It works on scale wherever you are in the spectrum. This is a sort of 10-person accountants. You can see on the left-hand side, these are their existing costs. So they were paying £257 a month. On SIP, they were going to pay 140, so not quite 50%, but near enough. Saving was 116. A new phone system was £84 a month. That was not a hosted system. That was a fixed on-premise system because that was most suited to their requirements. Hosted, you'd be able to do within similar sort of budgets. Ultimately, though, they actually got a brand new system, changed to the new technology, and saved £30 a month. The saving isn't wonderful, but the rest of the stuff really gives the argument some credence. So the benefits for the customer. I think one of the benefits that is getting overlooked massively at the moment is that you move before the rush. You know, when it comes towards the end, it's going to be a seller's market because you know there'll be 30–40% of people won't bother changing, and there won't be enough of us to supply it. So you get in now, you're going to get probably better price and more chance of it not going. Fraud protection is something else, something massively overlooked. The biggest fraud on UK businesses now is actually what's something called toll fraud, which is where criminal gangs hack into phone systems. It all sounds a bit kind of far-fetched, like a Will Smith film or something, but it happens every day, and it costs tens of thousands of pounds every day. Scotland Yard Serious Fraud Office have got a department that specifically look at this, but it's very underreported. You can find articles about it on BBC and stuff like that, but people don't want to say, "Oh, I had my phone system hacked," because it doesn't look very good to their customers. So you don't hear about it, but it happens. I promise, it happens every day. Toll fraud protection is built into SIP. There's insurance in it, and the phone system, one of the major phone systems we provide, NEC, has the only proprietary software in the industry that sits on the system and stops toll fraud from happening. You get to retain your number, so that's not an issue. Brand new phone system, so and obviously phone systems now are a lot more powerful than they were 10 years ago. So if you've got a phone system sitting there that you want to get rid of and put some new stuff in, and maybe get some statistics or have computer integration, then obviously that's one of the major benefits. And in their case, over the course of the contract, they saved almost £2,000. With phones, it's small savings, but they add up over time. So the benefits to a customer is they can save between 40 and 70% on their bill. As I say, average is about 50%. You get built-in fraud protection, because fraud protection doesn't just happen on IP phones, it also happens on ISDN and traditional systems as well. You get a brand new phone system, which you need to get. You're going to go back to this, I know I'm harking on, but you have to get that anyway. And you make the move now, stay ahead of the competition. One thing is where, especially if you've got a bigger bill and your bill's going to, your savings are going to be quite dramatic, then if you put it in now, then once you own the system, if you either purchase it up front or lease it at the end of the lease, you're going to have that extra money every month in your business. Your competitors might just be moving into it. So you've got the other option, obviously, is on-premise, is in cloud, as I've said, and that's where you literally just have a phone sitting at the end of your desk connected to a system in a data center somewhere else, so you use the internet to make the connection. And on-premise or cloud are the two ways of ownership. And effectively, the way I think you want to look at it is it's hire or buy. On-premise, you're buying it, whether you buy it on HP, like a car, or you buy it by paying up front, it's done and dusted and it's in your books. If it's a hosted system, you're going to pay for it forever. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but, it's the truth. People tend to make the decision economically and emotionally. From your point of view, you've got to think, am I happy having a phone system elsewhere, or do I want one on-site that I can look at and see and utilise? And also, obviously, do I want to pay a capital fee up front, or do I want to pay an ongoing fee? How do you want to structure the deal? to try and help with that, I've just done a bit of a little table. So you can see that hosted systems are good because they're always updated and they're very inexpensive. If you're a very small business, it's a way of delivering really high quality returns in terms of what a phone system can do for very little money. On the bad side, you've got perpetual payment, and if it goes wrong, it totally fails. If you're on-premise, you own it. Now, the thing about on-premise is it's modular for upgrades, so you can keep adding to it. And they'll always do a bit more of the on-premise solutions. It may sound a bit like I'm leaning towards it. I'm not. We sell both. I'm kind of ambivalent, and I'll just give the best advice to people. I think broadly on-premise tends to be a bit better, but it's not always the case. It's horses for courses. There's a low monthly cost to on-premise because once you've bought the system, it's a sunk cost. It's multi-resilient, and there is more substantial DR to it. You have to replace it on the bad side every 10 years, so there's a new thing. And for a micro business, it tends to be overkill because it's too much money for what it is. So the quantity of handsets is one of the things that will often dictate what the choice is of whether or not you go for hosted or on-premise. Payment preference is going to come into consideration. The requirements, so what you want the system to do, on-premise solutions generally are better at integrating with existing IT solutions like Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce or Act. Generally, they can do a bit more because they've been around longer and they're a less continually developed platform. Number of sites you've got, and that will come down to whether you've got. We have a client, for example, who's got loads of sites, but just with one or two people each site. So they have a hosted system because putting an individual system into each site would just be ridiculous from an economic point of view. We have other clients who've got multi-sites and they'll have an on-premise system at every site because it gives much better disaster recovery and there's much better ability economically because you know it's a sunk cost instead of a perpetual cost on lots of seats. Better quality is SIP. SIP's better quality, so whichever one you go for is better quality. On average, it's 50% less. Savings can provide for new equipment, as I've said, and you have to do it. And at the moment, you can probably do it for free. So that's kind of like the killer argument in it for me. So that was what I wanted to talk about with regard to phone systems. Has anyone got any questions? No? Okay. I'm going to look into whether or not we can make IT or telecoms work better for keeping people parked well, but I don't know of any solutions on that at the moment. But what I want to talk about with this is really the same thing. A lot of stuff like email has obviously moved into the cloud now. We've probably all seen a lot of that with Microsoft 365. It's been heavily advertised. There's cloud backup. There's a lot of stuff, and cloud is a word that's banded around a lot, but understood not so much. A lot of people are interested in whether or not when they come to the end of life on their server, particularly now Microsoft Small Business 2003 has gone end of life and finished. So people out there have got it, but are thinking, do I need a new server? Now, I mean, I remember when I bought my first server, it was a Microsoft 2003 Small Business server, and it cost what seemed like an absolute fortune. You know, there are different ways to do it now. We've found internally we still want a server to deliver certain services to us, but we also use cloud. So we've gone for a hybrid mix internally. Most businesses we find go for that. And I think that's really where this goes. So server, you know, it's kind of a good old server. Once you've got it, you've got it. Certain software isn't on the cloud or isn't up to spec or doesn't integrate well with each other if it's all cloud-based. People have an emotional attachment to a server with it being physical. It's there in their office and they feel safer with their data. On the bad front, if you want to contact the office to get files down, you've got to go in via a VPN with the server, which you know is really slow normally. You've also exchange on the server costs a lot of money and will slow it down. You've also got electric and air conditioning costs. And backup with a traditional server. If you don't back up in the cloud, that's one of the biggest things we've found when we've gone to see clients about IT, is they've had backup and it's failed. But nobody knew they were still changing the disks every night, because why would you know? And it requires regular and expensive replacement. So, you know, the argument is, this was meant to come up right at the end, so I've programmed that wrong. But the argument is, you know, should you get rid of it? And I think the answer is no. But you might want to think about how you integrate with it, how you use it. cloud's very good for a lot of things. It's always up-to-date storage, so your storage updates every night. If you get a good cloud backup, you can go back a long time and check for what you had in there previously that you've subsequently deleted. It removes a lot of strain from the server. So one of the biggest Microsoft Exchange would use the CPU at about 50% in a server, which is really sort of slows everybody else down. The cloud using Microsoft 365 really takes that away. So it really makes a big difference for people. It's much faster access for all users as well, for the same reason that it's not on there, so people aren't dialing into the server to find out information. Effectively, their computer isn't getting in for them. It's all coming directly from Microsoft. And there's a much lower IT dependence in terms of being looked after, because servers tend to go wrong, and the less that's on them, the less can go wrong. You never have to replace it. Is another point, because it's constantly updated with the latest version. The bad side is that some things aren't cloud-based. Cloud has limited storage. You will get an amount of storage. If you want more, you have to pay for it. And that's not as cheap, obviously, because you pay each month. So, again, the question, should you get cloud? And again, the answer is, I think the answer is yes. Everyone's got a different opinion on it, but I think the answer is yes, but as part of a hybrid strategy. I don't think the right strategy for cloud is to permanently have one thing or another. So, in my world, the servers for apps that aren't cloud ready, if a large storage, so files you might use just while you're doing a quote, you're putting the quote onto the server, you're dealing with that client for a brief period of time, and then you want to store it. Cloud I would use that for Exchange, because it's so cheap and it just takes the weight out of the server completely. It also offers backup. You get version control in cloud, and I think that's a really important point that's often missed. Cloud allows you to make sure that the version of the program or the contract or the quote that your people are using as they drag it down is basically the latest one. So they've not got an old contract on their desktop that they had 6 months ago that's now got different terms and conditions. So, well, that's it from me. You may be pleased to know I've finished, unless anyone's got any questions. We're at stand E12, and I'm also here now if anyone would like to have a chat. Thanks for your time.